the end of the first week of December, and mornings are pretty darn chilly around here in Idaho this time of year. I'm sure it's that way a lot of places in the country, but it's one reason why this is baking season. It's Christmas time, and I am making some of the softest, chewiest, delicious gingerbread cookies. These are roll-out, cut-out style gingerbread cookies made with dark molasses, dark brown sugar, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, and that's what gives it this really dark flavor. You could also make this with a whole grain flour instead of all-purpose flour, which would also give it a darker, more richer color and flavor. This is a super fun recipe to make with kids and let them either cut them out, roll them out and cut them out, or let them just decorate them with piping or just with a simple sugar cookie icing. Because these are sourdough, they're a little bit stickier than a traditional gingerbread cookie is, so I am using my bench scraper, or you could also just use a spatula, a metal spatula, to take these off of the counter and then get them onto the parchment lined cookie sheet, and that just helps them keep their shape and not get bent out of shape, taking them off the counter and transferring them to the cookie sheet. The first batch of these cookies that I made, I refrigerated them, of course, and let them long ferment in the refrigerator. I will, by the way, post this recipe in the description box below, or the link to it on the blog at farmhouseharvest.net. So they're sourdough. I did long ferment them in the refrigerator. That helps the dough to be nice and firm. And the first batch, I just rolled them out and baked them. And I will show you here that those they still spread even though they were refrigerated for so long. So the second batch, I cut them out, put them on the cookie sheet, and then put them back into the refrigerator for about 10 minutes and just let them chill one more time before I bake them. And those ones turned out a lot better. So this is the first batch. See, they kind of grew into each other. So definitely want to space them out at least an inch apart on the cookie sheets. But the second batch that I put in the refrigerator before baking, those ones did great and didn't spread as much on the cookie sheet, as you can see right here. Now, when you take these cookies out of the oven, they're still nice and puffed up, but they shrink back down. So you only bake them for like 9 minutes. You want to err on the side of under baking so that they're nice and soft and chewy. This is just a really simple, fresh royal icing recipe. It's just 3 egg whites and 4 cups of powdered sugar. So you beat your egg whites and just fluff them up. I'm using my KitchenAid. You could also use a hand mixer to fluff those up. And then you slowly incorporate the 4 cups of powdered sugar until you get this really thick, wonderful royal icing. So you can do it this way using fresh egg whites, or you can use the meringue egg white powder recipe that I have on the blog at farmhouseharvest.net. Either way, it turns out great. This recipe ended up perfect. I didn't have any powdered meringues in my pantry like I usually do, but it turned out great this way, and I always have eggs on hand. This royal icing would also be great for making a gingerbread house. It is hardened super hard. That is a Christmas tradition that my kids and our whole family just love to do. If you're looking for a really good sourdough gingerbread cookie recipe, I will link this in the description below. They make great gifts. The royal icing dries nice and hard. You can stack them on plates, and they are delicious. I am just showing you here how soft and chewy they are. Of course, you can't fill them in your mouth and see how chewy they are, but I roll them out about 1/4 an inch thick and bake them for 9 minutes at 350 degrees, and they are super soft and chewy. Perfect texture. The next recipe I'm going to be working on is a simple sourdough bread recipe. This is unlike most of my sourdough bread recipes. Most of my sourdough bread recipes start with using 2 cups of active starter or about 400 grams of active starter. This one I'm only using a 1/2 cup of starter, so that is a lot less than I am used to using. So I've reduced it from 400 grams of sourdough starter down to 100 grams of sourdough starter, so it's just a 1/2 cup. And then about 3 cups of flour, some warm water, and about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And this makes the most delicious sourdough bread. It's awesome. You definitely have to long ferment it in your refrigerator because unlike the recipe that has 2 cups of sourdough starter, it just doesn't rise as fast. It doesn't ferment as fast because it doesn't have as much starter in it. But this dough is so much easier to handle than the other dough. The other dough is a lot more hydrated, so it makes great, crusty, delicious artesian bread. This one's just a lot easier to handle. Whichever recipe you use, the higher starter recipe or the simple sourdough bread recipe, either one, they both turn out delicious, and I bake them both the same way. So I go ahead and preheat my oven to 425 degrees, score my bread, and then bake it for 25 minutes with the lid on inside the Dutch oven. And then actually lately I've been taking it out of the Dutch oven for the second part of the bake. Usually I just take the lid off. Lately I've been taking the whole loaf out with the parchment paper, setting it on the oven rack and letting it finish on the rack in the oven outside of the Dutch oven. And it turns out great. It browns a lot better, and the outside gets nice and crispy, which I really like. And I think it gets a little bit more even finish on the bake. And just like all my recipes, I will go ahead and link that in the description box below as well for you. Another thing I have been really enjoying lately is the tricolor quinoa. Sorry, I always say it wrong. Tricolor quinoa. I've been buying this just at my local grocery store, but you can get it at Azure Standard in bulk. I think they have it in 50-pound bags. And then you can buy your 5-gallon bucket and your lids for those to store long term. And it's definitely a lot cheaper if you do it that way. So I will be ordering that from Azure Standard with my next order. But for now, I am just keeping it in my cupboard. What I like to do is I like to cook a whole big pot of it. It's the same as cooking rice. So it's 1 cup of the dried quinoa to 2 cups of water. So I'm doing 2 cups right now of quinoa, 4 cups of water, and then you just let it simmer on the stove. It's about the same amount of cooking time as rice, and just until the water is steamed out and the quinoa is nice and fluffy, I add a pinch of salt, just like as if I was cooking rice to this, and it has a great flavor. It's a lot higher nutrition than rice or other grains. And so it's got a lot more fiber and a lot more protein, and I like to keep it in the refrigerator cooked. And I've been eating it for breakfast, and I'll show you how I've been doing that. This morning was cold. We have had a few mornings where everything is just frozen outside, and I keep this house about 69 degrees in the wintertime just to save on my propane bill. And I also love building a fire. I love having the fire. It is a lot more economical. It's a very economical way to heat the house, and I love the dry heat and how fast it just warms up the house. But what I do is I keep that cooked quinoa in a bowl in the refrigerator, and then I have it in the morning. I can just dish it out. One cool thing about keeping quinoa in the refrigerator is, and it's the same with rice and potatoes, Once you cook it and then you put it in the refrigerator, it becomes a resistant starch. So your body doesn't absorb the starches from it like it does if you were to eat it right after you cooked it, before cooling it in the refrigerator. So your body doesn't absorb as much of that, and it actually goes through your intestines and feeds your microbiome or the good bacteria in your intestines. So it becomes a prebiotic fiber. And I love having it in the refrigerator. It's delicious. Love the texture, love the flavor. And if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. Today, I'm going to show you how I eat it for breakfast. What I'm doing now is just mixing up some cinnamon sugar, but I'm using the monk fruit sweetener instead of regular sugar with cinnamon. And I'll just keep this in my cupboard, and then it's easy to use whenever I need cinnamon sugar. So I just take a nice big cup of quinoa, and then I'm going to sprinkle it. I like to use about a tablespoon. I'm pretty generous with the cinnamon sugar. And then you can top it with chopped apples, chopped pears, any kind of fruit. You could also use walnuts, any kind of nuts. And then I put milk in it. So I grew up having rice cereal for breakfast. This is so much better, and it's so much better for you. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend. This little recipe is not on the blog. It's just something I decided to share with you, but it is delicious. So if you like quinoa, you will love this cereal. Definitely try cooking it ahead of time, keeping it in your refrigerator, and it's ready to go in the morning. As always, thank you so much for watching my video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and we'll see you next time.